Jeremy. And Mr. Warfield wanted me to get some shots of you with lots of local color. But I can't think of anything too special.
Hi, Jeremy. Jimmy?
What a scoop!
How'd you like to take a walk with me?
Sure, okay.
Jimmy, come on.
Welcome, David. Thank you for joining us today at our super events. Part of the Cape Wonder Network with ChristopherReeve.co.uk.
And Supermania, CapeWonderEurope.com.
And our good friend
Andy Hanton, who doesn't have a website.
But he remembered his own name, which is
pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, I'm proud of yourself.
So you joined us today, and we've just watched Superman 4 on the big screen again. What was it like seeing yourself on screen again?
Well, it takes you back. You know, it takes me back to my youth. It makes me remember that I did have one at one time, although it's flashed by in such a speed of, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it was great to see it. It was just it was just great to be part of the whole event that you've staged today. And although it's only a fleeting moment on a film, it's just a privilege to be part of it and to be part of this event and things that you do for.
Thank you very much for joining us.
You're more than welcome.
David, are you surprised that after this amount of time that's elapsed between the shoot and now, that there is this kind of response and enthusiasm towards the film? Because you're a tenured actor, so you would have done a lot of projects. You would have been in a lot of places and done a lot of stuff. So, of all the projects that you've been involved in, why do you think this endures the way that it has?
I think it's because Superman is kind of forever. It's such a big part of people's lives, whether they started reading it as a cartoon character in comics, and some of us older folk will remember the original Superman series on TV and things like that. And it's the progression, as well as the new Superman films help to keep the legend growing, but the whole series of 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the original franchise of Superman is so special to so many people that it's difficult to put into words exactly why, but it just is. It is what it is. You know, it's very, very special.
So when you get the call in 1986 or wherever it was, and I presume you've seen the 3 earlier films, and your agent says to you, David, we've got you a gig on the next Superman film. What do you say to something like that?
Well, he didn't quite put it as bluntly as that. He just said, because he was an agent that always put me into quirky situations on different films, television productions and stuff like that. And he just said, he phoned me up and says, are you available, I think it was 2 days' time, to go up to Milton Keynes to do some shooting, some filming. So I said, yeah, I think I am, yeah. I said, what's the part? He said, well, have you ever done anything like a hot dog salesman before? And I said, well, no, I haven't. So he says, well, that's what you're going to be. So I said, okay. And then he babbled on about a lot of stuff, but then at the last minute I said, well, what's the film? And he said, well, it's Superman 4. So I said, yeah, I'm not going to miss that chance to be in something such a big, franchise.
Even with no prior catering experience?
No prior catering experience whatsoever.
How did you get into the mindset of a hot dog seller? I mean, what was your kind of your background? Did you have anything you kind of went into it with?
Does a hot dog seller have a mindset? I think the only thing a hot dog seller is interested in is selling hot dogs. No, I mean, I've done so much comedy stuff before. That's why this particular agent said, well, they wanted someone that looked a bit comical, which I was good at doing, I'm still at. But so I said, yeah, it'd be fine. So he said, they'll give you instructions when you get there, because there's no pre-script or anything like that. They just, it's a scripted part, and they'll tell you what you need to do when you get there. So, and that's what happened. I just after finding somewhere to park in Milton Keynes, I wandered over. Well, no, we actually parked another location outside Milton Keynes, and they ferried us in by bus a small minibus, and it was on that journey in the minibus that the assistant director said, well, we'll be suiting you out when we get there, we'll be dressing you up. So, not there was much, just a thing and a hat, you know. And then once we got there, then I said, well, what do you want me to do? And then Chris Reeve himself came over and he said, oh, well, thanks for coming. This is what I want you to do. He said, I want you just to sort of ad-lib it as much as you can, much as you want to. But he said, the main thing I want is this double take, you know. So I want you to react when I land and do the double take. And he said, you'll probably have a hot dog in your hand and just gesture with him, you know. He says, can you do that? I said, well, yeah. I said, it's not exactly difficult, is it, to do things with a hot dog in your hand? So I had a hot dog and a roll and this, you know, gesturing with that, really, you know, doing the double take. So, and it wasn't a one-take thing. We did it a few takes, you know, a few rehearsals. So, but and I didn't want to overspend myself in the rehearsals, so I saved a lot up for the actual take. You know.
We said it was the total filming was over 3 days. Wasn't it?
Yeah, because the weather was bad. I mean, the weather was not good for flying rigs, especially. You know, we did a couple of rehearsals with the stuntman coming in, and then he kept getting blown off course, and the wind was blowing stuff around. So you know, it was not easy.
Who was the stuntman on?
It would have been
the
Mark Stewart on this particular occasion, but it's amazing to think, isn't it, given the way that pictures are put together these days, that wind and weather would actually factor into how somebody, because it was done live.
Yeah.
You know, those shots were done for real. That's not how we do things these days. I mean, they actually strung that poor chap up by his loins and escorted him 400 feet up into the air to bring him into the middle of Milton Queen Square. So weather would have been a consideration the same way as it would have been an aircraft. Or something.
You would have known that because obviously you're doing the redux. We put you up on a crane, didn't we? So
yeah, I wasn't. Well, it felt like it was in mortal danger, but it wasn't exactly the same. So if today is anything to go by, the first question that people seem to really want to get onto you about is, what was Christopher Reeve like? Now, that is a pretty loaded question, but I think what people, especially like crackpots like us, when we ask that question, it's like we want to get an idea of what he was like, to not only to kind of work with, but as the kind of impression that he gave as a person on the set to you, because you know you're one of the fortunate people that have spent time.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, it was like quite mind blowing to be so close to such a figure, you know, apart from anything else, but he was so loaded with work. He was so his mindset must have been just totally occupied with what I'm doing here, what I've done, what I'm going to do, what follows on from this, who is going to be here, there, and everywhere. So, I mean, to get a conversation, albeit about nothing at all, was quite something when you consider the workload he had on top of him. And the responsibilities he had on top of him, and the other thing that only struck me afterwards was Margaret Kidder was bouncing everywhere on the set. I mean, she was talking to everybody, the crowds that had gathered, and one thing and another. So she was always there, and I thought, and then occasionally she would go over to Chris Reeve and have a private chat with him, and I think it was just to sort of. She was there really to stabilise him and just say, look, you know, don't worry, or everything's going fine, you know.
Really? So she was acting kind of like as a leveller for him?
Yeah, I think afterwards I didn't at the time, but then afterwards I thought, yeah, she must have been a tower of strength to him, because after having all her problems beforehand and coming back as she did, she must have had lots of help from probably Chris to get her through that. So she was helping him, because I mean, it wasn't a troubled shoot, but he was just laden with this burden of having his budget cut so drastically and trying to make a great film out of the limited budget he was on.
We saw in Martin's documentary, A Noble Ideal, that he had a lot of weight on his shoulder. You could see his mindset, the way he was thinking about things, what was going to do. You could see he was thinking through every single shot, what was going to happen next. It was all that weight was on him. So to have that support from Margaret must have been quite reassuring.
I think it was essential. Because every production that I've been on, whether it's television or film, I always took my camera with me, so I always took lots of film. But I always said to either the assistant director or the director, who was it, is it okay if I take films? You know, most of them would say yeah, but don't make sure you got rid of the camera once we start filming or whatever. And I said to Chris, as soon as I started shooting or taking pictures, is it okay if I take some pictures of this, that, and the other? And he said, yeah, that's fine. And it was like that all the way through, except for that last the last kind of scene where he was at the podium, and I took some really nice shots of him on the podium. And then he said, can you not film me because I've got to really concentrate? And he was looking straight at me into the camera when I took the pictures, and he said, can we put the camera away while I do this, because it's a really important part of the film. So I said, yeah, of course.
You could never imagine that kind of thing happening now.
No.
You wouldn't even.
Someone from production would have run up and probably taken that camera off you, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and it did happen on quite a few things that I did. They said absolutely no photography. So
Different age.
Well, yeah. I was just privileged to have been able to take photographs, apart from appear on the film itself. I mean, it's a privilege to do that, but to be allowed to take photographs from the man himself, and then to be directly said, okay, not now, because I've got to concentrate on this scene. So it showed the weight he had on him to not only to get everything, make sure that he was directing and everything was in place for that, but then to do the scene and do the speech that he had to do. I think it showed what an incredible chap he was.
Well, I think that most people don't realise, and we've done our best over the years to try and put this out there, is that precisely what you're talking about in terms of the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. And most people don't realise he actually he directed it pretty. I mean, Sidney Fury is the name in the credits, and Sidney Fury directed the picture. But I think Chris had inherited such responsibility by then that he just ran off and did second unit. He's credited for doing that. He also came up with a story, so in many ways it was his baby going forward.
Yeah.
So I suppose, and he's always said himself that he made a lot of noise on the set. That was a phrase that he used quite a lot. So yeah, it must have been weighing pretty heavy. And you did mention the budget. Now, was that kind of common knowledge on the set as far as in terms of the fact that we'd gone from working with money to none at all?
Yeah, well, it was kind of common knowledge. It was kind of like gossip.
Yeah.
It was kind of that story, but the crew were well aware of the budget that they were on and how sort of the cutbacks that they were making.
I guess they feel it first, though, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, it was it was making its way around everywhere. The story about the budget and things like that, and the cutbacks and what they were having to work with compared to the films before. And it was it was also why was the budget cut back so drastically on what was the storyline was better than 2 and 3, I think. The storyline, because Chris had a lot to do with it, and so it's an important film. So, but why would you cut your budget on such a successful franchise
Right.
at a time when things were progressing with special effects? Why would they not allow in the budget to sort of bring those special effects in and keep it
did they actually know why? Did anybody actually know why, or was it still just a subject of gossip?
No, just gossip. Nobody could. Well, I mean, you can't understand it now.
Oh no, it doesn't make any sense. But I was just wondering. Yeah.
No, so then it made even less sense. It just seemed, why would you jeopardise such a successful franchise and cut the budget?
We're still asking the same question.
We
after
had
all these years.
Oliver Harper here earlier, and
Yeah.
he said that Canon were working on 40 movies at that
Yeah.
time, and they were probably moving money from project to project and investing into the Master of the Universe, where they moved a lot of money into that production.
Yep.
I think they were hedging their bets.
I think David's point is absolutely correct. Why would you, I mean, that being a given, why would you take something that's been established over the prior decade and have made billions in box office turnover? Why would you take from that?
I think they counted on the fans turning up to see the movie.
Yes, regardless of anything, because they've got that built-in audience, and therefore
the die-hard fans like us who were going to go see it regardless. Yeah. And as Chris said in your documentary, Superman 3 made 130 million just in the US alone.
And was still turned to failure.
Yeah, exactly. So do you know what I mean?
You can't win anyway, can you? Let's face it.
I mean, if you put that in today's figures, I don't know what that would be, but it's still a very successful movie in even today's figures.
And how well remembered is Masters of the Universe compared to?
Well. There's certainly a following in that as well, David. There's groups on Facebook. There's all sorts.
Yeah, but it's Superman, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and it's kind of all encompassing. So.
Well, for us, I mean, we nestle into that because of the whole canon thing, don't we?
Yeah, we are pretty much uninvited guests to that forum as well.
Hi.
So, give us kind of an impression of what the weather was poor. It was November in Milton Keynes. It was raining, and you spent a lot of time presumably waiting while that cleared up and you could get the taste of.
Yeah.
Give us an idea of what your day would encompass on the set there, because
well, morning would have been breakfast.
Yeah.
Yes, which was always welcome. The catering was excellent. They never sort of cut anything back on the catering, so that was always
Where was
good.
that in terms of it? So
it was just a bus.
Oh really? Just parked in the square?
Just off the square,
Right.
And then one day it was parked a long way, so we had to get on the minibus and go to have lunch and then come back. So then it would be okay. We're going to try and repeat what we did yesterday. Hopefully the weather will be better, which it wasn't. And then then it would be just hanging about, drinking endless cups of tea and coffee, and just and chatting to the crew. And Margot was really good because she was just happy to chat.
Yeah.
She's still a bit very scatty, very sort of, out there. But I think the whole thing benefited from her being like that, because she just kept everyone awake, kept everyone buzzing. So she was a godsend, really.
I guess over the 3 days of the filming, they were hoping to get particular shots they could then put together as like the final version.
Yeah, and so the big worry there is continuity.
Yeah.
Because every a good continuity officer is making sure that every pleat or every crease and every crinkle is the same as it was the day before, by taking endless Polaroids.
Yeah.
Which is what they used to use. Polaroid cameras.
It's the lighting as well, isn't it? When it's
it's the lighting,
overshadowed, dark, and everything. You can't control that at all.
And it's the sound. It's the sound of people, obviously, because it's a train station. They're coming out and they're hanging about and they're watching, and there's so many things for a continuity person to have to think about and check. And so you have to go through all the photos you've got to do before, and all that is time consuming. And in that time, the weather could change.
Yeah.
So it becomes a logistical nightmare to make sure all those things are in order. That's why so many people look out for these differences in continuity in films, because you missed that, or you missed this, that, and the other. So that's what the day was like. It was just, then occasionally you get, okay, there's a break in the weather, let's try this now. And so they get everybody ready and set up, and then you're just about to shoot, and there's something else would happen. So, oh, cut. We got a pigeon in the background or whatever.
And there were pigeons in the background.
Yeah.
I hope they were credited.
I think they were shot, most of them. But yeah, it's just stuff like that. I mean, you can't account for it. You can't predict it, but you have to cope with it when it happens. And on a relatively big budget film, time is money.
Yeah.
Because they've got schedules they have to try and keep to in order to get the whole thing done. Different scenes, different places, and stuff like that.
Well, we for three are very grateful that you did, and it's such a memorable thing. It was even better when you were there for the Redux. For me personally, it was fantastic. It was very. It became a proper important project for me when you showed up that day.
Yeah, we switched from hot dogs to pizza, didn't we?
We switched from hot dogs to pizza.
Sponsorship, because we were sponsored by what was the pizza company called?
Oh, Domino's. I think.
Yeah, Domino's. They sponsored, so that's why it was pizza. I mean, if they got a hot dog sponsorship.
But for me, there as a fan, just recreating the whole thing, to have somebody, to have you there specifically, just lent the whole thing such an authenticity that we, how could you get better than that? And so from that point on, for me personally, it was just everything after that. The weight kind of came off my shoulders. So I'm always going to be really grateful to you for that. Never got to tell you on the day.
Too,
Could we bring in your special prop, the thing that kind of makes this whole thing?
Reach down.
David has brought in part of his costume from the film, recently discovered.
Where did you find this? Was this in the
Oh,
bottom of
it's
the drawer?
because I was saying to Alex, I had the BBC filming in my house.
Oh yes.
To redo certain places. It's a fix-it program,
Oh yeah.
And so they discovered, because my office and my outhouse were in such a mess, buried, loads of stuff buried. Even more photos of Superman that I'd lost. They rediscovered.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We were going to be taking care of that.
So, and I found the hat, and I thought, oh, okay.
Look at that.
That's where it's been.
Well, thank you very much, David. It's been
You're more than welcome.
absolute
What a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Phil, mate. Thank you.
Fantastic.